Wanted to go ahead and add this at the beginning of the video. Even before the intro, I forgot to bring up The Mandalorian. I know most people, especially Star Wars fans, or even be it casual or diehard, are going to be surprised or kind of tweetling why I decided to not bring up Mandalorian. I didn't decide. I just, for some reason, totally forgot about it when I recorded this originally. So, hey, maybe if this does well enough, I'll make a sequel video talking about The Mandalorian and my opinions on it. But yes, Mandalorian still applies to the positive aspects of my opinion of the Star Wars franchise. I just want to put that out there. Hello everyone, Dr. Clark here, and as you can see, this is another opinion video. And this one is me giving my opinion concerning the entirety of the Star Wars franchise. There have been quite a few people who've asked me my overall opinion on the franchise, especially over the past few years, especially since Disney has gained ownership of the IP. And I decided to make it a video. So I just want to start off by saying, for those who don't know, I try to be a fan of everything by being a fan of nothing, and I try to be a fan of nothing by being a fan of everything. I try not to have biases and I would say hard preferences for certain things. With that being said, Star Wars is a very interesting IP for me, since how I was introduced to the majority of the franchise and how I consume the majority of the franchise is within a very small niche. Less than 10% of the fan base consume what I consume. And I'm talking about the expanded universe as a whole, be it with the Legends continuity or with the canon continuity. How I even begun to enjoy Star Wars wasn't by the films, even though I remember my mother taking me to see episode 3 when it came out, Revenge of the Sith. But even before then, my main consumption of the universe was from things such as Knights of the Old Republic 1, Shadows of the Empire, and the 2003 Clone Wars series that Genndy Tartakovsky, the creator of Samurai Jack and Dexter's Laboratory, created. I can see a lot of people may not necessarily identify with the expanded universe, especially now that Disney has owned it for various reasons. And I just want to say, the movies as a whole never intrigued me growing up. That doesn't mean I think they're bad. That doesn't mean I think they're the greatest piece of gold in the lake. But my consumption of the universe was never based off of the movies, really. The novelizations of the films, of all of them, ironically, were more interesting to me than the films themselves. Now, I know the films are what set the baseline for the entirety of the franchise, the universe, and the characters, etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where their quality starts and really ends at. For example, with the Disney canon, I know it's very controversial to give your opinions concerning the new sequel trilogy, be it good opinions or bad opinions, etc. But one thing that I will say is that the new Disney canon, from the comics to some of the games like Jedi Fallen Order and Galaxy of Heroes, and the novels like the New Thrawn trilogy and Lost Stars, are good. I was more excited for the upcoming, or really right now, ongoing Darth Vader reboot series than I ever was for episode 9. So that should give you an indication on my consumption, even with the new movies. So I know that all of what I have said so far has really brought under contention to certain hardcore fans, because within that community is pretty much blasphemy for you to say anything except for the original trilogy or the prequels or the sequel trilogy isn't the best aspect of the universe. But to me, it wasn't. The stories of people like Cal Katarn, Cal Kestis, Darth Revan, Bolter Swan, I can go on and go on and go on. But those stories intrigued me more than the majority of the main movie storylines did. Like, even with the Legends post episode 6 material, Luke Skywalker's story with him rebuilding the Jedi Order and him becoming essentially as strong as a mortal could possibly become with the Force was more endearing to me than the majority of the stories within the films that people use as reference. With characters like Obi-Wan, especially with the new upcoming Obi-Wan TV show on Disney Plus, the miniseries, when those stories or part of those stories were told in the current Disney canon and even in Legends, I found it very endearing to see Obi-Wan becoming a mixture of old Ben Kenobi and him leaving Obi-Wan Kenobi behind. And seeing that transitional period was always more interesting to me. I still feel the same way about the franchise with Disney as I felt before Disney owns them. Even though I overall don't think or I don't have as many stories that I enjoyed nearly as much as the copious amounts of Legend stories. But just like with new Disney canon, the extended universe material interested me more, and I consumed the majority of that than I ever will the movies. And that also comes from the fact of which a lot of the influences of Star Wars I've consumed. One of the biggest ones is the Valerian comic book series, the French comic book series, or the French comic book series franchise, which was made into a theatrical live action film. Even though the film wasn't good to many people, the comic book series is probably one of the greatest sci-fi stories I've ever read. And a lot of that comes from how well it was written. And you can clearly see, especially hardcore fans of Valerian will tell you, George Lucas took a lot of his visual and story cues from the Valerian series, which there's nothing wrong with that. But me consuming the influences of George Lucas and all the other Star Wars creators gave me a deeper love and understanding for it in the universe as a whole. So without me rambling, regardless if it's Legends canon, original trilogy, prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, spin-off films like Clone Wars, Solo, or Rogue One, I prefer the comics, the books, and the short stories and the video games more than I enjoy the films. I always have. Because even with like Rogue One's entire story was based off of an assortment of different Legends stories concerning the stealing of the Death Star plans. And it was made into a film. Seeing Darth Vader cascading down a ship hallway are things that I was already used to seeing because of things like The Force Unleashed and the Darth Vader comic book series that existed in Legends before it was canceled to make way for the new Darth Vader series under the new Disney canon. I was used to seeing that already. So, no, it was ultra impressive seeing it in live action, which I never thought I would. But just here to remind everyone that I've already seen it in other mediums. Solo. I know many people don't like Solo, but Solo, to me, did one thing better than almost any other Star Wars film did. They were unapologetic with how they had references for the entirety of the franchise, even Legends things, but they were referencing things that happened in the novels and comics and even video games in the current Disney canon, things that have happened, what's happening during the events of the movie and after the events of the film. And Darth Maul was in the film, spoilers, and Darth Maul's appearance was, to many people who are just movie only fans, there's surprisingly a lot of people who didn't like it, but Darth Maul in both Legends and canon has been alive since I think 2010 or 2011. So for me, or was it 2012? But it was one of those years. But for me, seeing Darth Maul in that film made sense, especially since he survived the Clone Wars and the current Disney canon. So just to end off this video and not making it for too long, and I may make a sequel if people want me to go more in depth on certain things I've talked about. Star Wars, in terms of the entirety of the franchise, I think the films should be better in terms of, I would say, the amount of money they make and how popular they are, so all of the other material can be made. But for me, the majority of the media I consume for Star Wars isn't the films themselves in terms of the quality. But speaking of that, I'm very excited about the new upcoming Thrawn prequel comic trilogy that Timothy Zahn, the original writer of the Thrawn, of all of the Thrawn series pretty much, is creating. So highly look out for that. And for those of you who are fans of Darth Vader, please start reading both the Legends and the current canon Darth Vader comic book series. Dr. Clark signing out.